Hello, everybody in our viewing audience. I hope everybody's enjoying aGLIFF Prism. We are here for a Q&A for Breaking Fast, and we're joined with 4 members of the crew. My name's Jorge Paris, and I'm on the program screening committee. Let's go around and everybody introduce yourself and what your position was in the film.
My name is Mike Musalem. I was the writer-director of the film.
My name is Michael Cassidy. I played Cal in the film.
Omar Fadil, I was the composer. Sorry.
I'm sorry. My name is Amin, and I played Sam.
Excellent. Congratulations to you guys. This is an excellent film. We were very happy to have it, so thank you for that. It's getting
Thank you for having us.
Great response. Can we start at the beginning with Mike and say how this came to being and the short, which I wish I could see, and if it's available out there, let us know. But
yeah, it certainly is. It's available on Deku at the moment through Amazon Prime.
Okay.
In 2014, I was having coffee with a friend of mine who was asking me who I felt sort of best represented me and my experience in film or TV. And the reality is I really couldn't think of an answer. I couldn't think of characters that had the experience of me and my friends. And he encouraged me to write something which was not something that I had ever done. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I wrote the short of Breaking Fast, and it caught the attention of Seth Hauer, who was a producer on the HBO show Looking. And he really spearheaded that into production. We made that. We were lucky enough to go to Cannes and a bunch of other festivals. And from that, we really got a lot of encouragement to develop it into a feature, which took me about 2, maybe 3 years to write. And then in 2018, at the end of the year, we shot the feature. We did all of our post-production all of last year, and we premiered earlier this year. And here we are.
Here we are with an excellent film. Let's talk to Michael and Amin. What was the process for you guys coming into this film, and how did that all come together? You want to start with Amin?
Oh, hi. So the queer Muslim circle in LA is not very big. So I had met Mike. He reminded me that we met at a support group that I'd started a while ago for queer Muslims and people of Muslim background. But we were on each other's radar for a while, so I was aware of the project. And then I got an audition for it, and I worked really hard. And I was lucky enough for them to allow me to be a part of the movie.
The reason why this is so awkward is because I think Amin and I have 2 different narratives about the audition process. So I feel like we should use this platform and this audience to really clear the air.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened.
Well, Amin, but you say that you had to audition. All I say is we just, because of the roles available to you, you were never really allowed to do comedy, and we just wanted to get in a room and be funny together.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've said this so many times, but as a Middle Eastern Arab actor who's Muslim, a lot of times, at least earlier in the beginning of my career, the stuff that would come by me would always be like these very grim, villainous characters, or these very dark stories, or these characters that felt very othered to me, and that I had to do a lot of work to sort of build characters around and use a lot of imagination. So I wasn't given the opportunity to be funny or to have light material or play characters that have, a lot of joy and lightness, like I believe Sam has a lot of. He's very buoyant. So I guess now I'm learning that Mike really wanted to cast me, but had to convince other people, and there was no proof that I had the range to do that. But I still feel very lucky and humbled, and I found the experience really fun and humbling. And I like auditioning. I'm not at the stage where I get a lot of offers really anyway. And the few times that I have, they've always made me nervous, because I was like, well, what if my interpretation is completely different? We haven't really we're not sure if we're on the same page. So I find the process very humbling and important, and I'm really glad that they asked me to audition. I don't feel, yeah. I mean, in the past, I've like made fun of the process and been like, they didn't think I could be funny, and I proved them wrong. But I think I'm really glad I had the experience, and I'm again feel very lucky. I'm going to stop talking. I don't know.
No, and the only thing I'll add to that is Amin was I'm pretty confident the first Sam contender that we saw, and I think we quickly stopped seeing Sam options, because there really was no one else who could land the comedy and allow themselves to be as light as we were asking a character like that to be. And to Amin's point, I think it's very difficult for Arab actors, Middle Eastern actors to walk into a room and sort of be light. I think that oftentimes, you know, Amin and actors like him are going in for these very heavy-handed characters. And so
yeah, so then we become trained to believe that what is expected of us is to scare the shit out of the casting director, or to make them cry, or to come in and, you know, to have this like kind of dark mood. And so a lot of actors who are very well trained and have a lot of ability, you know, end up sort of that muscle gets sort of diminished, the comedy muscle, which is really sad.
It is very sad. It was not uncommon for me in the audition room to say to actors, this is a romantic comedy. Like, people treated the material very heavily, because I think that was the muscle that they were used to using. And so it really required people to rethink through the tone of the film that they were auditioning for.
I think also this intersection, and we should let Michael talk, but the intersection of identity is also so stereotypically, you know, people think about strife and, you know, oppression, shame and tragedy, and all those things are there, of course. So I think someone might see, you know, that the queer Muslim experience and think like, oh, I must handle this very darkly and very, you know, heavily.
Yeah, there's no way this story could have a happy ending.
Yeah, which is something I like so much about the film, is that it sort of subverts that expectation, you know, to like a total extreme. And I think it's very liberating, as someone who's had that experience, both light and dark, to see a celebration like that with so much joy and lightness and fun. Like, you know, let queer people of color have fun.
Michael, you want to talk about how you came into this film?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you guys just said, I read it and felt like it was so specifically, I think it's powerful in its specificity, but I think it's also, I had a feeling like it's easy. Like there's going to be a lot of walking and talking for this guy. And I really hope I get this part, because I feel like I can just walk and talk. And it's like a really simple, beautiful specificity. And as a lover of comedy and somebody who's done a lot of comedy in my life, I instantly recognize, before my character even showed up in the script, that the writer that Mike had a facility and understanding that comedy comes from a kind of specificity and realness, and that struck me immediately. It's on the page, and before I even responded to my character, and then I campaigned for Mike to hire me because I loved it, and I was out of town and I really wanted him to pick me. And we always have these conversations, but I think Amin and I are both sort of like also just showing the dark underbelly of what it's like to be an actor. Like you feel something and you want it so badly, and it gets taken away from you over and over and over again, and it just doesn't feel good. And so we assume the worst on the other side always. But this is a happy ending for Amin and I, at least. Not for
So
any
here's
of the
what
other
happened
people.
here's what happened with Michael Cassidy. Our brilliant casting director, Tina Becker, said, "What about Michael Cassidy?" And I said, "Tell me about him." And she said, Dare, which is a brilliant short gay film. And they had just shot a sequel of it that Seth, our producer, had a copy of through one of the producers of that film, and we watched it. And she said, and he was in Superman versus Batman, Batman versus Superman. And I said, yeah, yes, correct, yes, yes, correct. Well, yes. And she said, he read it. He wants to chit chat. I said, I love talking. That sounds great. We had one of these, and like immediately it was right. It was him. He was the one for Cal and for me. I mean, for Mo and for me. So.
Omar, how did you come on to this project?
It's funny. I was just thinking about that earlier of how we were introduced. Mike, do you remember?
Noor.
Was it Noor?
Yeah. Oh, no. It was Salam Darwaza.
Who's a mutual friend.
Yes.
I've known her for years. But
yes.
then when we first met, we found out, like, my good friend Noor was the legal counsel.
Our production counsel, yeah.
Which was
and the weird thing about Omar is that I was convinced that we were not going to use a composer. We were just going to have all diegetic music.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And so I was like very, very hesitant to meet with composers. And when I was telling my friend Salam, our mutual friend Salam, that I was like now on board with thinking about bringing on a composer, she was like, you have to meet Omar. You have to meet Omar. And so to work with another Arab Muslim composer working in this industry, like it felt like the perfect fit. And also we speak the same musical language, which made this very, very easy.
Yeah, it was an easy process. It's funny. I've worked with directors before who are musical, and sometimes it can be a little rough. But with Mike, because you have a musical background, it was actually very easy. And it was, I mean, that was one of the things, like whenever we first met, I felt like a kind of a connection between us. I was like, okay, I definitely would like to work on this. And it was a story I'd never heard before. It's a story I hadn't seen before. So that was compelling. And it was a rom-com, and I had just come off a really dark and all-consuming film. And I was like, yes, I love it. And then I think you guys sent me a cut. And I think then we met, and like, so all the boxes were checked. I was like, yes, sign me up. I would love to do it.
Yeah.
And it was a different score for me too. So that was like, there was everything that I wanted to check was checked. So it was a no-brainer.
And every time I heard a version of something that was in your head, I thought to myself, why did you wait so long to hire a composer? Like, this is like, you brought the film to a place that I never considered it to be because I couldn't imagine it. And you like literally elevated the whole experience for me. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I'm only as good as what I'm given to work with. So really the thanks go to you.
Well, and Omar, the range you had to go through, because you made music for some really light scenes that were, happy. And then there's the music for the heavier scenes, and you just blended that all so well.
Oh, thank you. I tried my best.
I wanted to talk about one particular scene, and I'd like to know if this was in the original short or not, but the scene around the dinner table with Cal and Mo and Sam and John, where the argument happens, that is an amazing scene to me, and hats off to you, to Aman. It's amazing.
Thank you. The short concludes at the end of their first date. So after they sort of leave each other at Fubar and they reconnect for a brief minute, and there's like maybe a minute left into the short, and then that's over, and we're left to sort of assume what will become of these guys. And the feature sort of lets us experience the entire month of Ramadan. So that scene was totally new for the feature, and we always knew we were going to climax to that scene. We always knew we were leading up to it, and for me, most of that scene is really because I couldn't let Mo escape this film without being called out on his own privilege and experience. And it does not go over my head that Mo's experience of his intersectional identity is one that exists. It's out there. It's real. It is the experience of many people, but it also is not the only experience. And so, having his best friend really force him to look at the world outside of his rose-colored glasses was really important to me. And to do that in front of his love interest and in front of the love interest of the best friend, who is already kind of a sort of douchebag, it felt like that scene really needed to sort of bring the whole film together.
And how did you approach that? I mean, it was because you're such this ray of light throughout most of the film, and you just really go to a place there. It was incredible.
Thank you. Well, I'll say the hardest part of that was the Lebanese Arabic. My parents are from Egypt, and my Arabic is okay, but the dialect is super different. So there's a kind of speech I have that's a bit emotional that's all in Lebanese Arabic. So that technically was the most difficult thing for me. I live at the intersection of these identities, so it's a conversation I've had before within the queer Muslim community. I think it was really important that Mike showed that there's diversity of thought and diversity of the way people express themselves and live their lives within the intersection of queerness and people who are Muslim or were born Muslim. So I was all raw nerves, partially because this intersection really, it's kind of a triggering thing to talk about, conversation to be had. So I was already sort of on edge. And also I was just like terrified that I'd mess up the Lebanese Arabic and that Mike would be mad at me.
It came out great.
Yeah, you were such a master, especially in the wee hours of the evening. It was like our very last.
It was late at night, I think.
It was.
Yeah.
It was well after 1 or 2 a.m. and you were tired, rightly so. It was an emotional scene, and we just needed to nail that Arabic. And you were a fighter through it.
Yeah, and you really helped hold my hands and believe. I felt you helped cheerlead me in a way that was, so few directors can do. Really
it's my only job. I mean, it's my only job is to cheerlead you. Cheerlead all the actors. I believe in all of your work so much.
Well, and Mike, your writing's so strong. Like for Michael, the standout scene for Michael is the scene outside of the hospital, which is just so powerful. And that was another thing of like, Michael's this ray of sunshine too, and always happy and joyous. And then here it goes. It just turns everything on its head.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to say is that it goes well. I mean, I always end up, I feel, talking about how much material we shoot and how much we perform in this film, and it makes it easier once you get over the hump of not having cue cards or something. Like once you have it in your head, it's actually easier, and that scene pretty much just acts itself. I mean, there's angles and there's lateness in the night. But we were able to rehearse a couple of times before we started filming. And Haas is a very giving actor. So we would rehearse a lot on set. We would rehearse tomorrow's work, Thursday's work behind a truck somewhere in between setups. And between all of that and the quality of the writing, like you said, I just sort of went for the ride. And and landed in a lot of different places, and then had this director who, Mike, is sort of behaving the way right now that he behaves on set, which is he's super generous and super positive. And and I agree with Amin that that's very rare to have all of this combined in one person, and then to get to work with them. And then you just sort of land over and over again in sort of weird spots, and leave it up to the people afterward to figure out what the performance will actually look like and what the film will be.
Can I'd like to compliment you, Michael, if I may.
Okay, stop. Okay, keep going.
When we started shooting that specific moment, which was really Cal-centric, we started because of, I don't know, some technical reason, we started on Mo's side. And so much of of Michael's brilliant performance was kind of just to assist Mo. And when we flipped the world around and we were on Michael, understandably so, Michael was tired. He cried through every take. He was great. And there was a moment that we had. Do you know what I'm talking about, Michael?
I mean, there's a lot in there.
There was a moment that we had where I just asked to walk away, and I said one thing, and we're going to keep it between us. It's a mystery, really. But I said one sentence to this guy, one, and this guy just fell into a puddle, and we were ready. And when we turned the camera on him, gold, pure gold. He is so dialed in. He is such an emotionally available, vulnerably accessible person that asking him to do these raw things was very, very easy. There was nothing forced about it, and I couldn't have been more grateful.
Thank you.
It turned out great. Omar, is there a scene that was difficult for you to score as far as the range of what was occurring?
I think, I mean, just in talking about that scene outside the hospital at the end, I think that was by far the most difficult scene, just because it was so much darker, and I think it was sparser, and everything else was kind of bubbly, not bubbly, but it was, you know.
No, you're right.
And then we went to that, and I was like, oh, how are we going to score this? I don't know. And I feel like we went back and forth 2 or 3 times. We were trying to figure out, like, what is going to work here? Like, how do we have that musical contrast between those happier moments and this without making it melodramatic or too dark or just too much, you know? And I think we settled on, you know, the actors have had this amazing performance. Just let them do that and don't mess it up, and just try to underscore it lightly, which is, I think, where we wound up. You know, and I think too,
we had an earlier conversation about leitmotifs for each of the characters having their own instrumentation. And when we got to that scene, you were able to weave that instrumentation to that was always nicely flowing together. It started to become dissonant in a way that was, I mean, it's like, it's a movie like this is sort of subtle in its approach to underscoring, but there is real artistry in the way you wove it together.
Oh, thank you. I wondered, did we do that? Was that one of the last scenes that we scored?
Mm-hmm.
Because it would make sense that it would be. It makes sense, like in thinking back on it, we would do everything else, and we would leave that one until we actually know what the road we've been on was. You know, we know where we're going. Mm-hmm. We know where we've been. So that makes sense that would be at the very end, because it was, you're trying to weave everything together.
Right.
Mike, have you showed this film to anybody that you knew it would be kind of challenging for them to watch?
Not direct, I mean, not like directly, but in a number of the screenings that we had prior to COVID and sheltering in place, and then in a number of the virtual screenings, we've had such an amazing response in terms of people saying, I never thought I would ever see myself on screen, or this helped me have a conversation with my mother, or we've had such nice responses that we get via email or in Q&As like this that we're so appreciative of. I mean, I think people are so unfamiliar with these kinds of stories that if they can foster or accelerate conversations like that, thank God, yes, please.
We also, we've got a question in from Valerie. She would like to know, where did the gospel choir come from?
The idea of the gospel choir came from the fact that one time I had a birthday for my best friend, and one year I had a birthday and she hired a marching band, and the next year, to one up her, I hired a gospel choir for her. So that's where the idea came from, and the actual gospel choir is one part singer in a recording studio and one part extra lip syncing to gospel choir singing in a studio.
We've also got something from Blake. He says, my boyfriend and I enjoyed this film so very much. One of the best romantic comedies in general. I appreciate what you said, Mike, about not letting Mo off the hook. Happens too much in rom-coms. And Amin, you were so funny and powerful. We are excited to see where you go. We are also excited to see where this film goes. So
are we. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
And Michael, I felt like I had known you, and I was sitting there going, why is his face so familiar? I went into my library, and I think it was a shorts collection called Boy's Life.
Yes, that's that's the first Dare film from a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I think 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Dare was a part of Boy's Life collection?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it was Boy's Life 5.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Really fun short for anybody who hasn't seen that. It's worth looking at. Well, we're gonna kind of have to wrap this up now. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate all the hard work you put in this film. Is there anything else you'd like to say? How can we promote this on social media?
breakingfastfilm.com, at breakingfastfilm. Other screenings are all listed on our websites. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. I sound like a very old person when I talk about social because I don't understand it. So I immediately got nervous that I was going to say the wrong thing. Yes, please do. And also hopefully this week we have a big announcement about the future of the film. So stay tuned.
Excellent.
Inshallah.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's been an honor and a privilege, and we really look forward to see what happens to this film from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, aGLIFF and Jorge and Bears Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.